Joshua Parker here again from healthharmonic.com, and let's talk about synthetic vitamins, synthetic oils, synthetic nutrients, synthetic supplements versus whole food supplements. Now, you probably hear this a lot that, certain vitamins are sourced from synthetic sources, and let's break this down, like what that really means, because it does get kind of confusing, and also there's different terminology thrown around that may really not be consistent among sources depending on where you hear it from. And spoiler alert, this is a product video, but I like to see product videos when I look for stuff. When I'm looking for products, I like to see information in these videos, and I so rarely see it. Usually product videos are just like pitching something, and this is what it is, and this is why you need it. And that's why when I make these videos, I really like to give you something you can take home regardless of whether you choose to try the product or not. So let's get into this. Again, sourcing really, really matters here. Now, it's some things it's really easy to tell that, okay, this is a whole food nutritional supplement, like some of these green powders and things like that. But in this video, I'm going to be digging into some areas where it's a little more tricky. You really have to know what you're getting into when it comes to fats and, like the omega supplements and fish oils and things like that. You really have to know what you're getting into to know whether you should consider it a whole food supplement or it's actually really more in the direction of a synthetic nutrient. And I'm going to kind of get into what I mean by this. But basically what we're talking about is using heat and pressure and sometimes vacuum. Different processes use different things, but it's usually a combination of those three things. And using those to separate different components of whatever the source material is. And this is really important to consider when looking at like fish oil products and things like that, is because most of these products are actually using what's called molecular distillation. And this is where a distillation column is used to basically create a vapor of whatever the substance is, the oil typically, or in a lot of cases it's an oil. And then the distillation column is used to separate the different components that have different volatilities in the column. And so basically, and this is the same way they distill crude oil, for example, into things like gasoline and propane and things like this. This is through the same separation. It's basically called molecular distillation. And there's other types of separations that are used as well. And when it gets into the chemistry, there's some technical terms for a lot of different things that are similar to molecular distillation, but the concept is the same pretty much universally, that it's using temperature, pressure, and in some cases vacuum pressure in order to separate the active constituents in there. So what's the downside then, right? Why not use temperature and pressure in all these processes? Well, first, before we get into that, like, why use it? Why not just consume the basic oils in their kind of whole food state? Well, in most cases, they're dirty. And that's what they don't want to tell you. They're dirty, and since they're loaded with all sorts of contaminants, by using these molecular distillation separation methods, they can take out the constituents that they don't want, remove those, and leave you with certain parts of the fat that you read on the label that you think you need, right? Like EPA and DHA and those things, right? Because people, they've been marketed so much that we all think we need them, right? I might not, but that doesn't mean those constituents aren't helpful. They're not useful. But when we can consume things in the whole food state, our bodies feel it as if it's food and not just some kind of synthetic piece of a food, and it really comes down to processed versus unprocessed. So that's pretty much the dividing line in all of this, is processed versus unprocessed. Is your food processed before you bring it home and cook it or whatever? Does it come in a package, or is it unprocessed, whole food, direct from the farm? And like in its kind of organic, natural state. So that's the big thing, and so that's essentially the root of why these so-called foods or supplements are put through all this heat and this damaging heat and pressure in this molecular distillation process, in order to to take out the bad stuff. And okay, then we have these things that you think you want, so that's what we put on the label. It's all broken down in exact increments, and we know what's there. Well, on the other side of the spectrum, there's plenty of whole foods that I'm sure you already consume on a regular basis, but the more of these that you even buy as supplements, the better, because that's going to be recognized by your body as a food, and not like, okay, what do I do with this piece of this food? Is this good for me? Is this beneficial? How does this affect the balance of other nutrients in the body? Because one thing I've learned from decades of learning about mineral supplementation and all this stuff, is that it's all a balance. We have this balance of nutrients, and especially minerals, in the body, and even certain vitamins can throw off the balance of minerals and absorption of minerals in the body, and that's vitally important to in terms of maintaining homeostasis and also regaining health if there's anything that's not so perfect going on, which we all face. None of us are perfect, right? Another great example of this molecular distillation that you are probably familiar with because of the degree of which CBD products have been promoted in the last few years is CBD, because CBD is obviously coming from hemp or cannabis, various cannabis plants, and there is typically some traces of the THC molecule in these plants, and when the extracts are made, then there is still THC typically in those, and in some states that makes the product illegal. So they have this need to take that out, and the common way of doing that is through one or more of these various types of molecular distillation methods, where the CBD component is separated from the THC, and that's getting into why these products that you see called an isolate, these are not whole food products, and arguably you could call them a synthetic nutrient. And the reason is that they don't occur naturally just in nature organically, they're not on their own like that. They're always going to be naturally with other components, like in this case, CBD is typically found with THC, CBG, and all these other cannabinoids and terpene compounds and other things that are found in the cannabis plant. But without all those things, it's kind of a synthetic. It's not synthetic in that it's not necessarily derived from a petrochemical source or something, and that is another type of synthetic nutrient that there's a lot of products that are actually derived from petrochemical sources and other types of things like that. But also plant sources can be used to create these synthetic compounds. I'll get into vitamin A as well, and I did another video about the importance of vitamin A in copper absorption, and I'll link that in the description here, depending on where you're watching this video. But getting back to the molecular distillation, so these components are separated out. When it comes to like the omega fats, the omegas can be all separated out completely independently. So, and even the specific types of omega fats, like the omega-3, EPA, and DHA, are completely separated, like the EPA from the DHA, and then they're typically recombined into the product that you might buy. So there's certain ratios of these different things, but they're not in that natural whole food type of assembly, and that's what makes them so different. Plus, they've been through this high temperature reaction, this high temperature molecular distillation, which damages these fats. So they're not as clean as they could be if they were just left in that whole food state. But of course they can't, because they're dirty fats. They're essentially they're the dregs of the fish processing industry, the skins and heads and the stuff, that the sweepings from the floor and stuff that they're literally like cleaning up and making into products, and that really is, from what I've heard, how they make these fish oil products, and for most sources. I mean, not all companies are going to be the same, but that's how there is so much of those products out there, because they're like making sure every little piece of the fish from these plants is used for something. So they throw it in the supercritical CO2 extraction technology, and then they get the fats out. Then they take those fats and then they put it through the molecular distillation. And some of the supercritical systems actually can use CO2 as the solvent and separate them out too. So there's a lot of different processes, but I'm not going to get into the weeds on that here in this video. But most important is to understand that these are not fats that are typically in the natural ratios and the natural forms that they were in the fish. So that's the difference between eating fish for the fats that are still in that natural state and eating these processed fish oils. So again, difference between eating processed food and unprocessed food that you might cook at home, right? So it's a huge difference. Let's get into cod liver oil, which I think is vitally important for, really as a starting point for balancing the minerals in the body, but also just ultimately for longevity. And, I apologize if you're a vegan or a vegetarian. There's a big reason why there's certain vitamins and that are really not found in vegetarian products. These are the fat soluble vitamins, and like vitamin A, vitamin D as well, but really we need more vitamin A. So this is the more important component of it. More importantly, for this video, I want to explain to you why really there's only one choice that I've found in the world when it comes to a perfect source for cod liver oil. And that's because most cod liver oil products, pretty much all of them except one that I've found, are made with high temperature, basically processes which use these molecular distillation type of processes, and very complex methods which use heat and pressure to clean up what's unfortunately not such a clean source in the first place, in order to produce their highly synthetic products. And what happens is that the heating and distillation processes that they're using are essentially destroying these natural vitamin A and vitamin D compounds, as well as the omega fatty acids, and to make up for that, these companies are adding synthetic vitamins into their products so they can put it on the label and show that it has this much vitamin A, this much vitamin D. So if you look on any of those products for cod liver oil, you'll see vitamin D added, and that doesn't even make any sense, because as far as I'm concerned, the reason that you should be taking cod liver oil as a food, not as a supplement, but as a whole food, is because of its high levels of retinol, which is also available from certain organ meats and things too. But again, vegetarians are missing this in most cases, because the active form, the retinol, as opposed to the storage forms of these vitamins like vitamin A and vitamin D, are really only available from these animal sources. And when it comes to the balance, really, as far as my research goes, we need at least 3 times as much retinol, the active form of vitamin A, as vitamin D. When we supplement with D3, we're actually getting the storage form of vitamin D, not the active form, which we get from sunlight, which is also activating the retinol that we can get from our food. So that's an important component to this as well. But we get the benefit from a clean source of actual whole food cod liver oil, because it has high levels of vitamin A, retinol, in that natural state, and a little bit of the D3, but not added, just naturally occurring in these natural ratios. It also would have the omega fats as well in their natural state. The brand, which we have on healthharmonic.com, and you can click the link below in the description, or maybe a button here depending on where you're seeing this video. But the Rosita is the only brand that is made with a traditional Nordic extraction process that's been used for generations, like I think hundreds of years actually, where they figured out that the oils release with a slight difference in temperature, which is reminiscent. It's basically the same as what happens in the ocean seasonally. So it's not using heat. It's just a slight change in temperature, and they harvest their own, they catch their own line caught cod, and actually harvest the livers fresh, and use this natural process with no heat, and have a very clean product. Every batch is tested, and it's got 100 times as much retinol, vitamin A, as vitamin D. So it's really helpful for balancing out the arguable over promotion of vitamin D in the alternative communities in the last few years. A lot of people have been promoting vitamin D. Oh, you need more vitamin D, you need more vitamin D. Yeah, from sunlight, the active form, but the storage form, which we get from supplementing, does not translate directly, or arguably indirectly, to the active form of D. So, and really, if you dig into this, these are really more considered hormones than vitamins. And that's why, there's these multiple forms in the body, and like I said, with sun exposure, we activate and are able to convert some of the different forms, like, for example, retinol. Now, getting back to the synthetic forms, retinol palmitate, that's one of the common synthetic vitamin A sources. And again, like, these are very synthetic, but they are a synthetic version, essentially a synthetic version of the storage form of vitamin A, not the active form. So it's very different, and that translates quite differently in terms of supplementation. So again, which do you want? Do you want a whole food type of product, or do you want a processed, heated, essentially destroyed product with added synthetic nutrients in order to make essentially a mass-produced, cheaper product with flavorings that are added in typically to cover up the gross tastes? Now, I'm not going to tell you that like everyone is going to love cod liver oil, the flavor of the Rosita. Personally, I wasn't too offended by it, even when I first tried it, like last year. But it definitely grew on me, and now I pretty much crave it. And to me, it doesn't really have much flavor. I have one chiropractor friend that complained a little bit about the flavor. I think that comes down to timing it with the foods. It is important to take on a full stomach, so I wouldn't take it on an empty stomach. Take it with a meal. We are also carrying their ratfish liver oil, which they use the same no heat extraction method. Again, every batch is tested. This is a very interesting product. Also, has different levels of fats and nutrients, but it's got a reputation. Of course, I can't make any claims on this, and I'm not a doctor, so and none of these statements were reviewed by the FDA, and no medical claims are made about any of these products. But there is a reputation about decalcifying the pineal gland with the ratfish oil, and this is much more potent, concentrated stuff. So it's typically just taken by the drop, hence the smaller size of the bottle. So yeah, both of those are available at healthharmonic.com. And again, depending on where you're watching this, you can click the link in the description below to see both of these products. And another thing that makes these products so unique is that the supply chain and the whole processing is kept at very low temperatures. So this is how these oils are preserved to that high quality level that you want to expect, right? And our company keeps our stock in the freezer as well. And we recommend when you get your shipment to put, if you get more than one bottle, you can put the extra bottles in the freezer and keep the one you're consuming in the refrigerator, and that'll keep it fresh for the longest period of time. Yeah, and at Health Harmonic we carry a number of nutritional supplements, mostly based on my research into finding the best stuff out there that I personally like to take. This is kind of my supplement cabinet kind of extended to yours in a way, at least the most unique products that I can get in large enough quantity in order to offer them to you. Of course, historically, going back to 2001, I'm kind of more known for the electromagnetic side of things in my research on electromagnetics and electrotherapy type of technologies. So you can see more of those kinds of products at healthharmonic.com as well. But again, when you're ready to check out our cod liver oil and ratfish liver oil, check out the links below here in the description, or depending on where you're watching. You can also find them at healthharmonic.com/nutritional supplements. Thanks for watching this video and spending some time with me today. I hope you found it useful and learned something here. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you on the website and hearing from you. And I will see you next time.